Okay, it's time to get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining our live lecture today. My name is Isaac, and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic is going to be career skills. So we're going to be talking about how you can make yourself stand out in this ever-competitive tech industry, and what approaches to take or not to take compared to regular other industry, maybe non-technical. So diving right in, let's talk about career planning. Okay, so just like when you are going through your senior year of high school and you start planning a career, right? And most of the time you have no clue what you want to do, but you just try to aim for something. And this is actually very similar to when you're planning your career for software. Okay, because most time when you start out, you just have no clue what you really like. Do you like front-end development? Do you like back-end development? Do you like maybe more web design work? Are you more into maybe data science, right? There's so many different paths you can take. So oftentimes, it's hard to know at first which path to take. And when you're trying to figure that out, we recommend you use a technique called SWOT. Okay, so SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over each one of those. So strengths would be, I'm a creative person. Okay, so if you're creative, maybe web design is for you, right? Maybe you want to create emojis and icons and, awesome layouts and all that great stuff. Maybe one of your strengths is you're motivating. Okay, if you're motivating, that's a very, leadership characteristic. So maybe you want to be in project management. Okay, maybe that's where you want to go. Again, identify what you're good at and what careers that relates to. Okay, weaknesses. Impatient. Okay, so let's go back to the project manager. If you're impatient, you probably shouldn't be in a project management position because you're going to have people like going past deadlines all the time and you'll pull your hair out. So maybe that's not for you. Maybe if you're outspoken, right? Maybe there's certain positions like customer facing, right? Maybe you shouldn't be in a customer facing position. Maybe you should be an engineer who's like, not talking to customers, and that way, you won't let yourself down. Again, no one likes to think about weaknesses, right? Everyone has them, but we all like to think about what we're good at. So make sure you also identify what you're not so good at and how that might impact your career and the paths you take. And then opportunities are, pretty straightforward, okay? They're the different, career paths available. So right now, this is actually a really exciting time to get into software development because there's just a ton of new opportunities arising. It used to be, you would just create websites, but now there's phone applications and there's smart connected hardware. And I mean, the list goes on. So you really have a lot of opportunities and, just look at which ones, are out there and available, because, we all can't be, how do you say it? Working at our dream job, so to speak. We have to see what is realistic on the market. Okay, so last, let's talk about threats. Okay, so criminal history is a big one. So like if you wanted to go and you wanted to build software for the FBI, you probably need a pretty clean criminal history to do this. Okay, so as much as maybe you're motivated by watching your TV shows and the FBI, those guys seem so cool and you just want to work with them, but you have maybe a couple things on your record. You got to identify that maybe I should take a different path because I don't want to waste a bunch of time just to find out that I'm not even eligible. Okay, so you got to identify those threats. Again, they're kind of like weaknesses, things you don't want to think about, but you should think about. Unemployment's another one. Is the job or career I'm getting into just going to be taken here in a couple years? Okay, so right now, a lot of people say web design is kind of in this weird space because it used to be you needed a web designer, period, if you wanted to have any sort of interface to a website, okay? But now they have a bunch of things like WordPress and Weebly and Wix and what I refer to as website builders, and it allows non-technical people to simply drag and drop a website. But the website is more so just the design, and there's not a lot of functionality to these out of the box because they're meant to be very static in that way. So some might say that getting into design might be a risky thing right now because, the unemployment for it seems like it could potentially increase. And that's not to say you shouldn't learn it. You could always learn things you want, but maybe not go for a career path in that, because maybe that will be, eliminated here in the next 5-10 years. And then finances is another big one. Some institutions, okay, so let's say Goldman Sachs, right? They're a very prestigious firm. If you're going to go write software there, you're going to need a degree from like Harvard or Stanford. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are at programming, you're going to need a degree from one of these Ivy League schools to work there, because that's just how it works. Like some jobs demand that kind of hierarchy. So maybe if you can't afford to attend these Ivy League schools, right, but you really want to work at Goldman Sachs, well, again, maybe that's a threat, right? Maybe your finances don't line up with that, and you should maybe target working somewhere else that accepts, degrees from other universities, right? So again, SWOT is a nice little tool you can use to help yourself identify what a general career path, generally good career path is for you for the software industry. Okay, so now let's talk about soft skills. Okay, and everyone has soft skills. So it's the skills that you bring over that are non-technical, such as interpersonal skills, how you act with others, your organizational skills, your leadership skills, and your communication skills. Okay, so all of us have normally worked at other jobs before we get into software development. Okay, I would say it's in the 90%. However, there's a small percentage who, this is actually their first job, and lucky for those people. I bet we all wish we had been there. Okay, but at the end of the day, that doesn't mean all your previous experience is null and void. Actually, there's a lot of times where your previous experience can help you in a lot of ways, okay? So there's the correlation of leadership positions, for example, okay? So if I've been a manager at my past 4 jobs, okay, I've been in management positions, one after another, and then I decide, hey, I want to go write software. And so I go to coding boot camp and I learn software, and then, I get into a job and I notice that, there's subpar management there, right? Like they're just kind of milking the clock and they're not really contributing. So, you offer some of your previous management skills to the table for the company you're working at. Say, look, I'm here to write software, but I also know a lot about running businesses, and this is what you guys can be doing to help. And you'll find that your soft skills actually add more value to you on top of your technical skills, okay? Because in this day and age, a lot of people have technical skills, okay? More and more. So to stand out, we've got to utilize the skills we acquired from other walks in life and utilize them to add value to our, overall job offering. Okay, so that's next. Let's talk about the tech resume. Okay, so tech resume is different than just your regular run-of-the-mill resume for a general job. Okay, so there is no 100% rules. Okay, but there are some good practices to follow, and then we're going to go over those. So the 3 C's is the best thing you can do to think, build out your resume. And the first one is clean. So make sure it's easy to read, proofread, not cluttered. This, should be pretty easy to accomplish considering that there's grammar and there's spell check and all that other stuff available in these word editor programs. So your resume should generally be clean, and then concise, meaning all content's relevant to the job, and we're using action verbs like, at my last job I was developing this, so we wanted to, give it a short, concise snapshot of who we are. And it needs to be convincing. Okay, so the best way to sound convincing on a resume is just be you. Okay, so, but be the professional you. Okay, so showcase your skills and experience, of course, but stick with regular vocabulary that you already use on a regular, everyday basis. Don't say, I am an exuberant worker. Don't use, huge, big, fancy words. Recruiters, these hiring managers, they can spot them a mile away, and they can see you're just trying to fluff up, your speech. And normally when someone's trying to do that, it's because they're trying to compensate for their technical skills, right? So you want to sound like, you're giving them the information they need and nothing more. You're not trying to impress them. You're not trying to unimpress them. You're just giving them what they ask. And, the impressiveness or impressing them will come when you demonstrate your coding knowledge, okay? Not when you give them your resume. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the top half of your resume, okay? Because statistically speaking, you only have around 7 to 10 seconds of view time on your resume, okay? So what that means is all the juicy details need to be at the top, because with 7 to 10 seconds, they're probably only going to get halfway down before they decide to put us in the follow-up pile or the trash, okay? So the 3 things we should always, always, always include on the top half of our resume are a link to our GitHub profile and LinkedIn, tech skills, and project examples. Okay, so we got to have those 3 things at the top of a resume always. And that way we're ensure that they get the most important information first before making a decision whether or not we're a good fit for the company. So that being said, let's take a look at a bad example of a resume. So as we can see here, let's just kind of go over what's wrong. Okay, so first off, we've got this huge blue ugly graphic to the side. Okay, no graphics, nothing, super solid like this. It's just distracting. So we don't want to do that. You notice they did list GitHub here, but it's actually not, their GitHub profile. It's just github.com. And also there's no LinkedIn profile, okay? So the problem with only putting a GitHub is a lot of recruiters are non-technical, meaning they don't understand how to navigate GitHub, right? They don't understand how to look at the source code and evaluate if you're a good coder or not. All they know how to do is go on LinkedIn and view your previous experience, your skills and endorsements, your recommendations, and all that stuff. And that's how the non-technical folk are able to evaluate you, okay? So you got to make sure you cover both your bases and put GitHub as well as your LinkedIn, because you don't know who the hiring manager is going to be. They may be technical, they might not be, but to cover both your bases, those 2 things should be at the top, and they are not. Next, they did list the skills, okay, and really it's nothing too wrong with this. It's at the top half of the resume, and it lists, languages and, some tools along with that. So I'd say this part's fine. But the third part is another mistake, okay? They listed their education before they listed their projects. okay? And in this industry, experience is way more valuable or meaningful than, said education, okay? And why I say said education, because anyone could say, I was educated here, I was educated there. But not anyone could build a project, okay? And that's the kind of underlying difference is this is really the showing you can walk the talk. And while it's good to put education, of course, it's easy to be fraudulent in kind of what you say. You might say, I attended Harvard, but you don't mention that you didn't graduate. You just attended there for like 1 month, right? So it's best to have them focus on what you can do and not what you say you've been taught, okay? Because at the end of the day, if they see your project runs great, that's all that they're going to care about. They don't care what you've been taught. It's like your software runs great. You're obviously know what you're doing. So again, projects should be before education. And that way it can be captured in the top half of this resume. Okay, and another thing I'd like to point out that's terribly wrong about this is look how long it is. It's 2 pages. So that's another thing is never, ever, ever have more than 1 page. Because again, normally you only have 7 to 10 seconds, which normally means about the first top half. So don't think they're going to take time to read a second page if most of the time they don't even read past the second half of the first page, okay? So make it easy for them. Give them everything nice and concise in 1 page. So now let's look at an example of a good resume, okay? So first thing we see up the top is their LinkedIn profile and their GitHub, okay? Boom, locked in right there. Next, I have my technical skills, okay? Languages, technologies, boom, locked in. First, thing on the top half of the resume. Then right away under that, I have projects, okay? Boom, I can immediately, click on these, get navigated, play with them. And then I include things like education, other, professional experience, volunteers, right? Things that are good and nice to haves, but not as crucial as these top, all 3 things here, okay? And also notice as well, this is only 1 page, making it nice and concise. Alrighty, so now we've talked about, the resume. Let's do a couple more things about the resume that we should never include, okay? So we've already talked about, don't make it 2 pages, don't put big, ugly graphics, things like that. So now let's go through another list of commonly known things that we should not do, okay? So misspell words or grammar. Okay, again, we have text editors. It's 2017. There's no reason you should have misspelled words. Grammar, that's a little harder, but at the end of the day, spelling is biggest culprit there. Next, don't ever include personal info like your social security number. If they're going to hire you or run background checks, stuff like that, they'll ask for your social security number at that point. Normally, if they're asking for that, it normally means they're interested in hiring you. But don't offer that up front, just like on your resume, because oftentimes you're making copies of resume and you're handing it out, and all it takes is 1 misplacement, and then your social security number is just floating out there, and you know how that goes. People can really take advantage. So don't include that, and don't include as well things like jokes, okay? So even if they're tech-related jokes, like I like to hack the FBI in my free time, it's still unprofessional. And that's the thing is, even though we're in the tech industry, we still want to be professional. So that being said, make your resume professional and don't take up precious space with silly, jokes and stuff like that. Don't include irrelevant work or job experience. Okay, so if you worked for Aunt Sally in the summer of '03, probably don't include that because it doesn't have anything to do with the job you're getting into. Meaningless words you don't normally use in everyday vocabulary. We talked about that, right? again, just make sure you be yourself. Don't put reasons for leaving previous positions. Most of the time, they will ask if they really want to know. And of course, you should be honest with them. But at the end of the day, if they don't ask that up front, you shouldn't offer that information up front. Okay? Because let's say, for an example, you had an aunt that, was you really loved and you wanted to save up and buy her a car, So you decided that you were going to look for another job and make more money so you could, take care of your aunt. Okay. So all you're putting on your resume is, well, I left my previous position to make more money. Okay. And they might see that as like greedy or whatever else. And even though you might have done it for good causes, right? You're trying to help your aunt out. At the end of the day, they might not see it that way again. So you might just shoot yourself in the foot by offering that information up front. So again, wait till they ask it to give that out. Okay. So next, don't include hobbies. This is something that people oftentimes include because they think, yeah, the employer, if they see that I like playing video games or guitar, then, they'll connect with me and they'll want to hire me. It's like, it's not so much like that. Again, your resume is meant for professional information only, and hobbies is what's considered a space waster. We could be putting other valuable information on our one page of landscape versus I like to kayak or, hike or whatever. They'll get to know your hobbies if they hire you. Okay. Next, don't put salary requirements. Okay. Don't bring that up even until they offer you the job, basically. Yeah. Salary requirements, putting those on a resume just makes you look greedy. Okay. And don't mistake that employers want to believe you're there to improve and contribute to the growth of their company. Okay. So when you say, I want this amount of dollars, first thing, it makes it sound like you're just there for the money, and they want to believe you're there for a bigger purpose. Okay. So don't put that up front. Next, don't include references. This is kind of surprising to some people. But it goes back to, it's a space waster. Okay. We can put something like professional references available upon request. A one-liner like that won't hurt. But if you have to list 3 references with numbers and addresses and all that, it's going to take up too much space on the resume. Okay. So just don't include it and put more valuable information instead. And also don't include unprofessional contact information. Okay. So some people got their, email maybe back during spring break of college, right? And so maybe they named their email address, Johnny the Drinker at yahoo.com. Okay, so now they've got Johnny the Drinker email on their resume because they haven't updated it, and all it takes is one hiring manager looking at that and thinking, oh, this person is an alcoholic or whatever else, even though they might not be. They can make an immediate judgment about you based on your contact information. So make sure if you have an unprofessional email or voicemail, something like that, make sure you get it cleaned up during your job search, because you really don't want that to be the reason you don't get the job, because, that's something that's very easy and controllable by your, oneself. Okay, let's move on to the topic of networking. Okay, so networking is super duper important. And there's 2 kinds of ways to network. You can do online or in-person networking, okay? And in-person networking actually is the most effective way to get a job in this industry, okay? Surprisingly, you would think software industry, everything would be online, but actually it's not. There's actually a hidden market where 80% of the jobs are not posted online. And 80% of jobs are filled from referrals, or meeting someone, and this is where these networking events come into play. Okay, so everywhere in the U.S. right now, well, I won't say everywhere, but most places, there are tech meetups. And most of the time, they will teach you something, and then they'll have, food and drinks afterwards, and you get a mingle for an hour, and it's a good time. So what's great about these kind of meetings is there's people from all walks of the tech industry. You got developers there, you've got hiring managers, you've got recruiters, bankers. I mean, you just really meet, everyone under the sun. But what's great is the connections you make are really priceless, okay? Because you'll meet someone and you'll say, hey, I'm a web developer. I'm new to the area. I just started going to this event. And then they'll say, oh my gosh, I know a guy who needs a web developer. Let me give you his card, right? It's amazing how fast you will connect with the individuals you need to get you that, foot in the door to the interview. A lot faster than having to compete with a bunch of other people online, okay? So again, in-person networking, super important and super effective if you want to get a job fast. So a couple of sites we recommend to go to are meetup.com and eventbrite.com. And literally you just go type in your city and your event, which is normally going to be, tech or programming or, .NET or Java or Ruby, whatever really. And you'll meet with that group somewhere and a designated date, and you could go from there. So next, let's talk about finding the right fit. Okay, because there's a couple of reasons actually. When we walk into that interview, we want to be prepared as possible, actually. And one of the best ways to do that is do a little bit of research about the company before we join. Okay, so this does a couple things. First, it lets us know if the company culture lines up with what we're about. Okay, so maybe some of us have religious beliefs that we cannot drink. And maybe, we go apply for a job and we research their culture and we can see that, oh, they drink in the office all the time, right? Maybe that's not somewhere I want to work. Maybe I want to work somewhere a little more conservative and, that I don't have to deal with that. So good. I didn't have to apply for the job and then go to the interview and then just to find out, after a week or two working there that I don't like it. And then I have to start my job search again. And it's just not a good thing to want to go through. Okay. So, doing our research helps in that regard, but also during the interview, if you've actually, looked up, like the company's history and you can sound knowledgeable about what they're doing, it makes it sound more so like you're there for the company's mission, and maybe you are, rather than just there for the paycheck. Because here's the thing. These companies know you're there to make a living. They're not like negligent to that fact. They sign your checks. But the thing we've got to keep in mind is, again, there's a lot of people who want to make a living. They want to find the people who want to make a living and want to make a difference. Okay? They want that double-headed spear, and that's what you've got to offer them. And to do that, you can, spit a bit of knowledge during that interview. Say, I noticed your founder, used to be a developer when he started this company, and I really, believe in artificial intelligence or whatever, the company's specializing in at that time, right? And there's a lot we can do with that information during the interview. Okay, so make sure you do a little bit of research before you walk in there. Okay, so now let's revert back to the job search. Okay, so we already talked about the in-person, right? Networking yourself, that's huge. Make sure you do it. But now let's talk about the online job search, okay? Because even though in-person networking is the most effective, we can't deny the fact that a lot of jobs are still found online. Millions, actually. So we need to utilize the tools and the services available to give ourselves the best chance of getting in an interview and getting a job. So while there are tons of job boards out there, a couple of the top ones we recommend are ones like Indeed, Monster, Dice, and Craigslist. Okay. So this last one might surprise some of you. You might be like, well, Craigslist, that's weird. It's classifieds. But unlike these three right here, these are used more so for bigger corporations like Amazon or Facebook or Google, right? However, Craigslist is more so for small mom pop operations, right? Where they don't want to go through a million resumes and try to find the best person, and they just want someone to build them a website maybe or a phone app, right? So sometimes that's the best place to find work too, is because maybe a smaller startup doesn't have the money to post on these job boards, so they will post in Craigslist, but they're looking for a junior dev. So don't count out some of these smaller services as well as the job boards, because accumulatively, they tend to have a lot to offer. Okay, so again, networking, that's the hidden market, 80%, in this online job search, that's the other 20%. Okay, next, let's go ahead and reiterate the email and voicemail. Okay, so we already talked about you want to make sure you have a clean email. So as we see down here, it's a good example and a bad example. And also a short and to the point voicemail. Okay, so we brought this up before, bring it up again, only because this is actually one of the things that hurts people a lot during their job search. Because during your job search, you're doing good, you're turning in a nice resume, the resume is built good, everything is great, you look like such a good candidate on paper, until they reach your contact information, and then that's all it takes. Or until they call you for an interview, but you're sleeping and they get your voicemail and, it's inappropriate, right? But you don't want to lose opportunities just because these simple things you can change. So I reiterate it because you want to make sure you have the best chance possible. And most people don't take the time to change these things because it's a small pain. But I guarantee you, it's going to be a bigger pain not being able to find a job because you aren't willing to take the time to update them. Okay, so switching gears, let's talk about LinkedIn. Okay, and by now you might have heard of LinkedIn, you might have not, but chances are probably, okay, because LinkedIn's the largest networking platform for business professionals in the world. Okay, so LinkedIn, if you might have a profile, but if you don't, let's go ahead and let's go over what makes up a good LinkedIn profile. Okay, so LinkedIn, like a lot of these online services, is free, and when you sign up, you go ahead and fill out a bunch of professional checklists about yourself. And so let's just go down the page here and talk about what's going on. Okay, so first things first is we have the photo. Okay, and the photo, as you can see, it's nothing fancy. It's just nice, clear image, and he has a smile. The smile is so important, guys. Whether you're in the tech industry or the automotive industry or the maybe landscape industry, it doesn't matter. The smile sells it. Okay, if you're someone who's smiling, it's someone who's friendly, someone who's kind, right? That's the kind of person everyone wants to be around. So make sure you smile in your pictures, even if you hate it. You need to do it. Okay. Next, our headline. Okay, so as you can see here, it's got a nice headline, short but sweet. Summary is kind of like a little about me spiel. Okay, so 2, maybe 3 paragraphs about what you've been doing, what you're up to, and what's next. As well, you want to list your experience. Okay, so this is where LinkedIn acts as sort of somewhat of an online resume. Okay, and a lot of recruiters will tend to look at your LinkedIn before they'll look at any sort of PDF file you send them. okay? Because it gives them a lot more than just, your experience. It gives them, your skills, your endorsements, your recommendations, and a bunch of other stuff too, okay? So uh, that being said, after this experience, make sure you list organizations. So, there's some coding organizations out there, but then there's some non-technical organizations you could be affiliated with, and that will help improve your chances of landing that interview. Education, very important. If you have education, definitely list it, because training's better than, or some training's better than no training. Volunteer experience. This is very, very big, because it shows you're selfless and you're not always about the money, and you're more about making a difference. And again, when it comes to these interview guys, they want to believe you want to make a difference more than you want to make money. Okay, so volunteering and that kind of stuff really helps. Skills and expertise. This is my favorite part of LinkedIn, because how this works is you simply list a skill, and then people who are connected with you and know you on LinkedIn, they can actually endorse your skill. And why this is really nice is because there's a lot of developers who say they can do things they can't. And so there's kind of a big distrust in that regard. So what helps is not only having those skills on your actual physical resume, but in LinkedIn, we have a bunch of 40, 50 people endorse those skills as well. And now the recruiter or hiring manager looking on LinkedIn, they can have a little more peace of mind about, okay, all these other people say that this, that you're probably not making it up. Okay, so it kind of solidifies that. Honors and awards. This is great. Yeah, definitely list those if you have them. Courses. Okay, this goes back to education, and how the courses there affect your overall outcome as a business professional. Projects. This is another really great part of LinkedIn. I really like, where you can link and list and describe projects you've built. Okay, and why this is really good is non-technical or technical recruiters can come in here and click on your projects, and they can actually view them in a web browser and play with them, and kind of validate who you are. And this half the time will sell them on getting you the interview or not, just based on what you've done. And then their big one here is recommendations. Okay, so it's similar to our endorsements for our skills, except these are written recommendations to where they tell the world why you're a good employee at what you do. Okay, so again, there's a lot to a good LinkedIn profile, but it's worth taking the time to make sure that these basic points are met to give yourself the best chance of getting noticed. All right, moving right along. Let's talk about GitHub. Okay, so by now you should know what GitHub is. And what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at an example of a good GitHub profile. So let's click on this. And as we can see, we have a nice smiling person. First thing that's greeting us, right? Just like LinkedIn, a nice smiling person. If we scroll down, we can see that she has had a ton of activity this year. Okay, it's definitely died down towards the end here. Probably working full time, committing to companies' repositories and not her own. But at the end of the day, me as a hiring manager, technical recruiter, I can come in here, I can pretty much validate that, yeah, they've had almost 1,000 contributions the last year. They've got 64 repositories. I can go through these. I can look at the actual code because it's all, how do you say it, all public. And yeah, I can kind of validate who she is, and so this is generally what you want your GIF to look like. You want, again, the photo here, your basic, nice links here, and then you want to just fill this with, all your professional repositories and projects, so everyone can view those when they're considering you for an interview. Okay? So, next, let's talk about your online branding. So, it's 2017, okay? The reality is, as unfair as it may seem, sometimes recruiters or hiring managers will look at your social profiles to see what kind of person you are um, before they decide to give you an interview or job offer, okay? So, for example, your Facebook profile, it's pretty revealing, okay? A lot of people post a lot of personal stuff on Facebook, and some people post pictures of themselves drinking last night, okay? And so for a hiring manager, even though you might not do that all the time, they might look at that and say, well, if they're drinking that picture, they're going to be drinking all the time, and I don't want to deal with the hangovers and the missed days at work, so I'm just not going to hire them, right? That's an example of bad branding. We don't want our online brand to hurt us in a way we're not going to get job opportunities. An example of good branding would be something like having a high number of profile followers, okay? Because there's nothing wrong with being an influencer. In fact, it's good because being able to influence people or have people follow you, or says that you are either really friendly or you are have leadership characteristics, which either one is good for the company. Okay, so make sure that if for some reason you don't have good online branding now, you go and clean up your social profiles to give yourselves the best chance of success. All right, now let's talk about the elevator pitch. Okay, so typically once an interview, normally towards the beginning, you're going to get the question thrown at you. Tell me about yourself. And it's more of a prompt than a question. But what oftentimes happens is when we're asked this question, we just puke out the first thing that comes to our mind. And normally it's where we grew up. We normally say, my name is Isaac, and I grew up in California, and I like tech and video games, and I want to work at this job because, you guys are so great, right? And it's just like a puke sandwich. So what you can do to avoid yourself, from looking unprepared in this way is get ready an elevator pitch. Okay, an elevator pitch is broken down into 4 different factors. Okay, so normally it should only be 30 to 60 seconds long. It should tell the employer what you do well. It should tell them what you want to do, and it should tell them why. Okay. And again, there's no secret to this. It's really just being yourself and listing these things in order that makes sense, and making sure you know when to quit too, because you don't want to be too long-winded, right? So elevator pitches, again, 30 to 60 seconds, because it's meant to be quick. It's not meant to be long-winded. Okay, so now let's talk about the oh-so-dreaded tech interview. Da-na-na-na. Okay, so a lot of us are scared when we hear the word tech interview, right? Because all we hear about is you're going to be thrown at a whiteboard, and you're going to be given complex algorithms to solve and all this crazy stuff, okay? So just know that every tech interview is different, okay? Yes, some of the bigger companies tend to test a little higher. So if you're going to go apply at Google or Facebook, you probably are going to run into some really complex scenarios. However, if you're applying at run-of-the-mill, maybe developer agency or a startup of some sort, right? A lot of times, their interviews are not going to be as crazy, okay? And so as a junior developer, it's most likely the job you're going to end up in. So don't worry so much about, oh no, I'm going to have to know every algorithm under the sun. Really, it's better to just prepare for as many scenarios as possible. And we have a couple tools we recommend doing for that. Okay, so CoderByte is great because they have actual interview questions. that range from easy to medium to hard, and they're in code form, and they've got code simulators and all that good stuff, so you can run the code right there in their program. Okay, so CoderBytes is a great one. CodeBytes is also great because you're paired up with another programmer and you guys have to build something, and this really helps improve your on-the-spot skills. Okay, because as a lot of us know, when we're asked to do things on the spot, we tend to go blank and forget, and so we can help practice in that way with CodeBytes. And a really good one is Interview Cake as well, because Interview Cake actually has derived, up-to-date, and maintained interview questions, and they're very well known for being pretty good to use. All right, so let's wrap up by talking about the subject of follow-up. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the tech industry is different, but it's very similar to industries in a lot of ways. And follow-up is actually one of those ways. It's very similar to other industries. Okay, so it's better to follow up and call people and let them know that you thinking about the interview, and you were waiting to hear back, and it's good to make them know that you still want it after the interview. Okay, because what can happen a lot of times is these hiring managers can interview 10 people, and then they're like, oh, I like 2 guys really, really good, but I don't know which one I'm gonna hire. I'll just decide tomorrow. So they go to sleep that night, and what do they know? They got an email or voicemail from one of the applicants the next day saying, hey, I was just following up on my resume, just want to reach out and see how everything's going, that kind of thing, right? So what that does for a hiring manager is I didn't know which one to decide, but the one person took more initiative than the other. Okay, and that means a lot, because employers are all about people taking initiative and doing things on their own. So because a lot of people don't follow up, the few people that do tend to stand out. Okay, so make sure you're one of those people, and you give yourself the best chance possible in that regard. Okay, besides that though, it's about all the material we have for today. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for any questions, and we can answer those accordingly. No questions today? Doesn't seem like it. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for attending. Have a great day and happy coding.